In Birmingham after the Great War, mud was not just on the streets, it was in the lungs, in the books, in the soul of commerce itself. And from that mud, Thomas Shelby did not build a gang, he built a company. A predatory startup with no formal board, no legal charter worth respecting, and no moral overhead to slow expansion. While other men came home from the trenches looking for work, Tommy came home looking for leverage. He saw Small Heath not as a neighbourhood, but as an undercapitalised market. He saw desperation as demand, he saw fear as brand recognition, and he understood the first law of empire better than any aristocrat in London. If the system is broken, the man willing to weaponize the cracks becomes king. The original Shelby business model was brutally elegant. Illegal betting was the product. Street intimidation was the enforcement arm. Family loyalty was the operating system. Information moved faster than the police. Cash moved faster than the taxman. And violence, selectively deployed, became the company's most persuasive customer service policy. This was not chaos. This was process. Every bookmaker they leaned on, every race they influenced, every corner they controlled widened their margin. Tommy's genius was not simply brutality. Plenty of men in Birmingham had brutality. His genius was scalability. He understood that crime without structure is only appetite. Crime with accounting, hierarchy, and vision becomes industry. So the Peaky blinders began to evolve from a local nuisance into a vertically aligned enterprise, one that could turn neighborhood muscle into regional market share. Tommy Shelby behaved like a founder CEO long before the world had that language. He delegated enforcement to Arthur, risked strategically through John, and used Polly as chief financial officer, treasurer, and stabilizer of internal capital. Grace, once she entered the operation, became both threat and intelligence variable. Everyone had a function. Everyone had a line item. And Tommy, cold as winter iron, stood above them all like a man reading tomorrow's balance sheet, while the rest were still counting today's coins. What he wanted was not simply profit. Profit was a tool. What he wanted was legitimacy. He knew that real power is not made when a man can break the law. It is made when he can write the invoice, host the dinner, shake a judge's hand, and have the law thank him for the opportunity. Every corporation reaches the same strategic crossroads: stay local and remain vulnerable, or expand and absorb the risk through scale. Billy Kimber was that crossroads. Kimber controlled the racetracks, the legal betting pitches, the established distribution channels of vice. In modern terms, he held dominant market position, superior infrastructure, and customer access. Tommy did not merely challenge him, he studied him. He entered the supply chain, learned the terrain, took the legal pitch when it suited him, and waited for the moment when an incumbent giant became complacent. Kimber believed the Shelbys were useful subcontractors. Tommy understood they were in the middle of a hostile takeover. When the confrontation came, the language of it was bullets, but the logic was corporate. Eliminate the competitor, capture the roots, reassure the frightened market that continuity will be maintained under new management. In another century, men in suits would do it with debt, litigation, and press statements. In Small Heath, they did it with blood at the races. Kimber fell, and with him fell an old operating model. Tommy had not just won territory, he had redefined the regional economy of gambling. He was no longer a bookmaker with muscle. He was a consolidator, a monopolist in a flat cap. The market had spoken in the only language Birmingham respected. The winner is the one left standing when the smoke clears. London was the next column on the ledger. But London was not Birmingham. London had layers: Italians, Jews, dockers, politicians, intelligence services, old money with polished boots and new money with blood beneath its fingernails. Expanding there required more than courage. It required acquisitions, alliances, and controlled demolition. Tommy entered the capital the way multinationals enter emerging markets, by identifying fragmented competitors, exploiting rivalries, and converting chaos into ownership. Sabini, Solomons, aristocrats, communists, crown operatives, these were not merely enemies. They were regulatory obstacles, distribution partners, and merger opportunities wearing human faces. The Shelby Company did not cross into London to coexist. It crossed to dominate. That is the real genius of the Peaky Blinders when viewed not as outlaws, but as executives. They were never sentimental about the core business. They diversified before the old revenue streams could collapse. Betting gave way to protection, protection to import-export, import-export to political access, and political access to state-sanctioned contracts. Tommy understood what every empire learns eventually. The black market is only the nursery. The real money is in becoming indispensable to the official world. Once you can serve the government, bribe the aristocracy, and threaten labor with the same handshake, you no longer operate in the shadows. You own the lights. So the Shelby Company Limited became a masterpiece of vertical integration. Auto parts exports provided commercial cover. Warehouses became nodes in a transnational logistics network. Political office became an executive firewall. Government contracts turned criminal infrastructure into patriotic enterprise. What had begun in betting shops and back alleys now moved through ports, factories, parliamentary corridors, and drawing rooms where men with inherited titles mistook Tommy Shelby for an upstart, not realizing they were already doing business inside his machine. This is what old money fears most, not vulgar violence but efficient competition. Tommy was not born into capital. He reverse-engineered it. He laundered force into legitimacy and wrapped ambition in the language of national interest. And yet every great enterprise hides a deferred liability. In the Shelby case, that liability was never financial. It was metaphysical. Tommy could build systems, but he could not build peace. Each promotion cost a brother. Each expansion cost a piece of his sleep. Each new market opened over a grave. The balance sheet kept growing. The man at the center kept shrinking. By the end, Parliament, export firms, landed influence and social access had all been achieved. The impossible had been done. A bookmaker from Small Heath had entered the aristocracy, but the return on investment was poison. Because there is no successful hostile takeover of the world that does not, eventually, turn inward. That inward collapse is where the Immortal Man begins, not with triumph, but with retreat. The film places Tommy in wartime exile, isolated after the death of Arthur, living with ghosts, writing his autobiography, reduced from kingmaker to haunted archivist of his own violence. Meanwhile, the company remains alive without him, and that is the cruelest irony of all. Truly scalable institutions do not die when the founder disappears. They continue. They mutate. Under Duke Shelby, Tommy's illegitimate son, the Peaky Blinders keep moving product, keep raiding, keep leveraging the network. But now without the founder's discipline and under the influence of a darker, more reckless market logic. Ada, now the MP for Birmingham South, sees what Tommy built becoming something worse. Efficient, ambitious, and morally ungoverned. The new crisis is not a street war. It is macroeconomic sabotage, a Nazi-backed counterfeit money scheme rooted in the real horror of Operation Bernhard seeks to flood Britain with forged pounds and crash the economy from within. Beckett, the scam artist and fascist intermediary at the centre of the plot, recognises the Shelby network for what it is, a ready-made distribution machine. In other words, the very efficiencies Tommy created, trust routes, dock access, loyal crews, covert logistics, have become attractive assets in a hostile partnership with history's worst shareholders. Duke enters that orbit. The son inherits not merely the brand, but the appetite that made the brand profitable. And this is the great dynastic curse. Succession without wisdom is just accelerated decay. Then comes the real, hostile takeover, not of territory, but of paternity. Duke becomes the next generation executive, trying to prove he can run the empire with less hesitation than the original founder. He is younger, hungrier, and less burdened by conscience. Beckett believes he can use him. Tommy realizes too late that the company has produced its own replacement. The son can move within the structure the father designed. He can betray, negotiate, manipulate, and pivot. He can play both sides of the deal. In corporate language, Tommy is facing founder displacement. In human language, he is looking into the mirror and seeing the version of himself stripped of every last restraint. When Ada is murdered after trying to expose the operation, the cost becomes unbearable. The market has reached into the family ledger again. So Tommy returns for one final audit, not to rebuild, not to scale, to measure damage, to identify leak points, to liquidate a threat. The plan is pure Shelby Company logic. Old allies reactivated, the dock network mapped, transport routes weaponized, tunnels used as stealth logistics, barges turned into explosive assets. Meanwhile, Tommy crawls through the dark toward Beckett's warehouse through literal tunnels and figurative memory as Duke appears to compromise the operation by feeding Beckett false expectations. It is a brutal piece of misdirection worthy of a boardroom assassin. Beckett prepares for armed men and receives annihilation instead. Explosive barges, landmines, gunfire, and the sudden violent efficiency of a company that remembers exactly why it once terrified a nation. The counterfeit money burns. Beckett dies. The state is saved by criminals who understand supply chains better than patriots do. The company survives the crisis. On paper, that is a victory. But paper has always lied. Because in the final exchange, Beckett wounds Tommy mortally, and the founder is left with what every empire builder receives at the end, the bill. Not from the bank, not from the crown, from the bloodline. Tommy hands Duke the bullet marked with his own name, the final transfer of authority, the last succession instrument, the ultimate signed resignation. It is not quite execution and not quite mercy. It is corporate governance in its most ancient form. The founder chooses the heir, and the heir proves legitimacy through obedience. Tommy dies not as a king, not as an MP, not as a successful businessman, but as a man who finally understands that endurance is not the same as salvation. Duke becomes the new Rom Barrow. The enterprise continues, the stock remains live, but the original capital, Tommy's soul, is gone. And that is the true history of the Shelby Company Limited. Not a gang story, not even a crime story. A corporate story, a case study in scale, brand control, monopoly pressure, political arbitrage, succession risk, and terminal founder burnout, Tommy Shelby took a muddy post-war corner of Birmingham and turned it into an empire that could move from racetrack betting to international trade, from black market muscle to parliamentary influence, from family survival to geopolitical consequence. He achieved what the old families feared most: self-made power with no reverence for the gatekeepers. But every dynasty that rises by force eventually learns the same fatal arithmetic. Expansion multiplies revenue, but it also multiplies ghosts. And when the founder becomes just another asset to be sacrificed for continuity, the company may endure, but the man is already written off. Once, I nearly got fucking everything, but nearly doesn't count.